لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله ما لنا رب سوى لا إله إلا الله.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. لا سيما بقية الله في الأراضين أجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف. At the end of the discussion about determinism and freedom, there is a philosophical discussion. And Allama starts with a reference to different types of agents or different types of fa'il. And he says that when we reflect on the effects and on the impacts of the beings, we realize that these effects and these impacts are because of some agents. And those agents, sometimes they do something without knowing. There is no need for knowledge. Knowledge is not involved. And sometimes there is knowledge, but that knowledge is not influential, has no role. And sometimes there is knowledge, and that knowledge is important. So the first two are very similar. Either it has no knowledge, like for example, if something, for example, like water or gas has some effect, it doesn't know. Or sometimes there is knowledge, but knowledge has no role. Like for example, we have knowledge of blood circulation or about breathing, but that knowledge is not important. Even if you don't know about it, it happens. So there is no role for this knowledge. But those things that there is a role for their knowledge, then sometimes they do it voluntarily. For example, you think whether I should eat this bread or not. You think about it. You have different types of images of bread, different types of understanding of bread, and then you compare it to this bread. For example, is it a good bread to eat or not? Also, is this a bread which is permitted for me to eat or not? Maybe it's owned by someone else. So many considerations must be taken into account, and then finally you think that this is good for you. And always we do something if we think it is good for us. Yeah? Even those who do something bad, at that time they think that is good for them. Even those who, for example, smoke cigarette. Although they know that smoking cigarette is not good for their health, but overall judgment is that at this time it's good for me to smoke. Otherwise they don't smoke. Do you accept?
They just think about pleasure, joy, or they thinking that is better for them?
Yeah. So he thinks that the pleasure that I am gaining overweighs the harm.
No, sometimes we know that it doesn't overweigh the harm.
So you don't do it then. You only do it when you think it's better for you. But better, not better in reality. Better for the eyes, in the eyes of the agent. The agent thinks that this is better for him. Even if someone steals money or does a mischief, he thinks that this is better for him. Although he's wrong, but he thinks that it's better for him.
Actions are not following the intellect.
Yeah.
Maybe they're...
No. What you mean by intellect?
this is a criticism to what you're saying.
No, that's another issue. Sometimes we use reason just for understanding the process, okay? End and means. For example, I say, I want to become rich in a year. I want to become millionaire in a year. Then I use my reason. How can I become millionaire in a year? So I have to cheat. So here my reason helps me to cheat. But it's different from reason. Because you have forced reason to use for, to help you in this way. You understand? It's not, the reason is innocent. But you use your reason for understanding relations between ends and means which are not good. Okay?
But a person, the case was different.
No, it's the same. We come back to you, yes.
For example, a person who is smoking, if you ask him, even at the time that he was smoking,
Yeah.
ask him, don't you know that this is harmful? He said, I know that this is harmful, and I know that it's very bad for me, but I'm just enjoying it.
Bad in the health. But he says it's good to smoke.
No,
He says even life without smoking is useless.
It's just for enjoying, not for being better.
Okay, when I'm saying good, I don't mean good for health. I mean good overall. So that person says, okay, there is a pleasure in smoking and there is a harm. When he compares them, he says, pleasure is better for me. I want to enjoy myself. It's not that everyone has interest in health. Even, sometimes we do the same things. For example, I know that it's good for me to have physical exercise. Every day I should, for example, have, some kind of physical for 1 hour. But I don't do it. Why? I know that my body needs that, but I say, I have so many things to do that, instead of 1 hour exercise, I do some research, for example. I know that is bad for my health, but I think overall is better for me. But I may be wrong. I may be mistaken. Even if I want to do more scientific work, still it's better to look after your body. But I'm saying that we do something when we are in a position that we think this is good for us overall.
In your example, if the person who doesn't do any exercise says, I don't do that because of laziness. In this case, does he think that...
So there is a pleasure in laziness.
Even in the case of
those who are lazy enjoy being lazy. Yeah.
So pleasure is a criterion. Yeah.
Pleasure, of course.
For being better.
You don't do anything unless you gain a pleasure. You must have a desire, and that desire, when it's satisfied, it produces pleasure. So pleasure is the reward for following your desire. Okay, so what's your point?
I think the point is, sometimes we do something because of our intellect. We argue for doing that, for example, say it's good for us. But sometimes we do something because of our emotions, pleasure. So it's different, It's not the case that always our actions are following the intellect and the argument. So what does it mean to say something is better or good for us?
No. Intellect and pleasure cannot replace each other. Even for those things that you decided by your intellect, still you must have a desire for them. Otherwise, you don't do it. We never do something for which we don't have desire or motivation. But intellect can be used in two ways. Okay? Have you got gold to write on? Can be used in two. Can be used in two. One is to define your aims and objectives. Okay? Sometimes we use intellect to define what type of life I should have, what type of ideals I should have. This is role of intellect. Okay? Sometimes we use intellect just to discover the relations that exist between the realities of this world. Whether they are good or bad, that's another issue. Okay? For example, if I want to make a house, I should know how to use materials so that we can make brick and, glass, window, all these kind of things. Or if you want to become, for example, rich, if you want to have prosperity, if you want to have knowledge, if you want to have anything, you need to use your intellect to discover the relations between the things, and then accordingly you decide that I should do this as first step, second step, and so on and so forth. These are two roles of intellect. Sometimes people use intellect not for deciding the first case. So they don't use intellect to decide what type of life I should have, what type of ideals I should have. They take this from other sources. They only use intellect for understanding the relation between the things. So for example, a person like Muawiyah uses his aql for the second, not for the first. For deciding what type of life he should have, he doesn't refer to aql. But he uses very much aql to understand, if I do this, what is going to happen? Or, if my enemy does this, how can I avoid that? So he uses aql for discovering the relation between the things. So this is what, some people call aql ma'ishat. Okay? So this type of aql is functioning in all people, but not necessarily in good direction. And aql is innocent. It's like, for example, you have a very good person, a very wise person, but you force him to teach you how to do bad things. Okay? Or like those two angels that God sent, and they were learning from them magic. Yeah, Harut and Marut. Instead of benefiting from them, they were learning from them bad things. Like how to divide between a husband and wife. Yeah? So it's possible that sometimes someone like aql or angels or wise people can be misused. But aql for deciding ideals has no replacement. Nothing can replace aql. If people don't use aql, then they make decisions which are not rational, and maybe they make mistakes. Maybe by chance they can make good decisions. For example, if I follow my parents, maybe by chance, because they have had good life, I become good. But it's by chance, because just by following there is no guarantee. But if you follow aql, there is always a guarantee that you will have a good type of life. So every person would not make any decision unless somehow there is a desire, there is a motivation. Okay? And that desire, sometimes for some people, is the only thing which matters. For some people, no, they use their aql, they have some ideals, and they say, okay, I am not going after every type of desire. I have my own way. So for example, I want to become a scholar. So although I have desire for playing, desire for traveling and so on and so forth, I spend my time in studying. I want to watch TV, but I don't watch TV. I read my books, write my papers. So this is the way aql can get involved. Otherwise, many people just go after desire. And many people go after short-term desires, because long-term desires need some kind of patience, and people want always, quick fix and quick solution. Yeah? So people prefer, if you give them, for example, 1 cup of tea now, instead of waiting for tomorrow and give them a whole meal. If I say, I give you 1 cup of tea now, or tomorrow I give you the whole meal, they say, no, I want 1 cup of tea now. So this is the way it works. I don't know whether I have discussed this issue of Tawbah here or not. It's a very beautiful, point about Tawbah, which related to here. We said everyone, when he makes a decision, it's because at that time he thinks that that is for him a good decision. Okay? Overall. Not good decision in the sense of intellectually or, spiritually or religiously. Means overall. So for me, smoking is now better. Although it harmed me, but overall it's better. So in the case of Tawbah, there are two types of Tawbah. Sometimes a person is very hungry. Okay? And he sees that there is a food which belongs to someone else, but that person is not here. So he eats the food of someone else. Okay? When he eats the food, his hunger is over. He has a good nap, and after that, when he wakes up, he said, "Oh, what a bad action I did." So he becomes really sorry. He says, "Oh Allah, please forgive me. I am really sorry." And he's really sorry. But tomorrow, when he's again hungry, again he will eat. And after that, when hunger is over, he again becomes really sorry. These are the majority of people. Most of people, when they do Tawbah, is like this. When there was pressure and attraction of the sin, they were not able to resist. But afterwards, they say, "What a bad action I did." Or when they were young, they were not resisting against sins. When they become old and married, then say, "Oh, what a bad thing I did." Okay? If this person, when he regrets and decides to compensate the damage he has caused, maybe Allah forgives him. Okay? Because at that condition, he's really determined not to do it. And he's very sorry. So maybe Allah forgives him. But a better type of Tawbah, which is a very high position, is that when someone commits a sin, he improves by thinking about the bad nature of sin, by thinking about the damage that he has caused to himself, by gaining more taqwa, so that when he is put in the same condition, he never commits the sin. This is real Tawbah. Now, do you understand the difference? The first person regrets, but because the pressure is over. If it doesn't happen in his life again, okay, so he will not come. But if it happens, he may do it again. But the second person, after committing a sin, his knowledge, his understanding, his commitment, his love for Allah has increased. Therefore, if you put him in the same condition, he will never do it. This is Tawbah Nasuh. Pardon?
Does it have a condition to only to thinking or to have some improvements in his spirituality?
So that improvement is either in understanding or in his love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or both of them.
Is it possible just by thinking after that?
By thinking about the damage of the sin and that sin is bad thing, you can increase your determination.
By remembering things that maybe he knew at that time, but he didn't.
Yeah, it's not just a matter of remembering. Sometimes remembering, but most of the time you know. But by thinking, it becomes active. When you think about something, you absorb it. There is a big difference between something that you know and something that you have thought about it and you have grasped it. Sometimes, for example, I say smoking is forbidden, for example, or smoking is harmful. I know this. But sometimes you do a research on this and think about it for days. Reflect on this. Then it's very difficult for you to smoke. Although still you may do it, but it's very, very difficult. Why? Because you have so much thought about it that now it has become part of you. So a proper tawbah is not to do it even if you are put in the same condition or maybe even in a more difficult condition. Okay? Sometimes even your understanding, your love for Allah, your taqwa goes so high that even if they bribe you or they tell you we give you something much more, you don't accept. For example, maybe there was a person who was getting bribes, for example, $100, and he realized that is bad. So even when he's in need, not when he doesn't have need, when he's in need, he doesn't accept. Even if they give you $1,000, $10,000, he doesn't accept. So it means he has changed. He has transformed himself. Okay. So sometimes there is a role for knowledge in action. Sometimes there is no role for knowledge because either there is no knowledge at all or there is knowledge, but then knowledge is not influential. It doesn't bear on the decision of the agent. For example, Allama Rahmatullah Alayhi says, when you have established qualities, malakat, established qualities. Like for example, when you want to speak, these letters come out from your mouth. But how many of you think about this process? That how these are produced? That, when I breathe, then the air goes to those, wires in my throat and they produce, sound. And then by my tongue, I make different letters. We don't think about these things. Even if you know it, you don't think about it. You do it automatically. Or for example, like breathing. Or sometimes some of our emotions or feelings become so powerful that you do things without thinking. For example, if now all of a sudden you see that this roof is collapsing very quickly without being warned, then you may do something without thinking. And if someone records us, they would see that what type of people we are. Sometimes maybe even we jump over each other and go out. Depends. Sometimes no. But you don't have time to think and make a proper decision. So you act just automatically.
According to your quality, according to established quality.
According to your qualities, or sometimes can be just a reaction. For example, I am here, someone puts a piece of fire on my hand. All of a sudden I do something. But this is not really an action that I have thought about it. It's a kind of reaction. So these are not the things that we are very much concerned with in akhlaq and morality or law. But as we said, sometimes there is something that we think about it. We consider different possibilities, like eating a bread. Is this a good bread? Is it permitted? Is it mine? Is it legal? Not. We think about it, and then finally, when I decide that this is a good one to eat, yes. If you are totally losing your control, then you are not responsible.
But if we focus on these situations and we work on it, maybe we can control ourselves before these things. So we are responsible for that.
Yeah, that's another issue. If these reactions are because of some qualities that you voluntarily acquired or you could change, then you are responsible for those qualities.
So these are not.
But for example, if someone brings a fire here and then I move, I'm not responsible. So for example, if here we had agreed that no one should move, then I move, you cannot blame me. Say, why did you move? We said no one should move. So it was not in my hand.
These are not volitional.
These are not voluntary, no. Because there is no decision-making process here. So, Allama says the first type of action, we call them fi'l iztirari. Those things that you do it without knowing, without planning, without thinking. And sometimes is iradi, which there is a role for knowledge and decision. And these are by themselves divided too. Sometimes I say, I want to buy a car. Okay? So I have an old car, I want to sell it. I go to the market and sell it with a reasonable price and buy a new car. Sometimes I am in need of money urgently. So I need to take my son or I don't know, someone, my friend, to doctor. I need money. There is no money. They don't accept him without money. So I have to sell my car. And then there is a person who takes advantage. My car worth 10 million to man, but he knows I am desperate. He says, I give you cash, but 5 million to man. Here I have to sell him because I need money. Okay? Is this permissible morally? This is another issue. So we may say, no, it's bad that this person is misusing and taking it. But Islamically, the transaction is valid. Yeah? Transaction is valid. Because if we say transaction is not valid, then if there is no one to buy it in a reasonable and fair price, then my son or friend will die. So transaction is valid, but that person morally is blamed. Why he has taken advantage of such a case. Sometimes the situation is different. Sometimes a person puts a gun on my head and he says, if you don't sell your house, I am going to kill you. Okay? So here, I think that if I get killed just for keeping my house is not useful because anyway, I'm not going to use it. So, or maybe he's killing someone else, but still I think it's not good to lose someone's life for this. So I decide to sell my house. Here, although they use ijbar, they call it kind of compulsion, but philosophically, again, you have freedom, free will, and freedom is here. So philosophically, you are not majbur, you are not, forced. Yeah? Because you think again, you decide this action is good or bad, and finally you make up your mind. Yeah. So even in such cases, philosophically we are free. The only time that we are not philosophically free is when there is fa'ila qasri. Yeah, it's more than ijbar. Qasri means in the sense that someone takes your hand and signs the contract. You cannot do anything.
This is called ijbar, I think, and the first thing is called ikrah.
No, in fiqh, this is not ijbar. Even if they put gun, that is also ijbar.
That is ikrah.
Ikrah or ijbar? When we say someone is majbur, sometimes we use it in this sense. It means that
distinguish between these two things. Say ikrah is like the first example, and ijbar is like the person who is.
Yeah, that is philosophically. From a philosophical point of view, real ijbar is when the person has no control at all. That is ijbar. Or qasr. Fa'il qasri. But if the person decides whether because there is a compulsion or he is in need and someone is taking advantage, in any way, he is free. He is free, and you cannot say that there is no philosophical freedom. Allama mentions this because some people have thought that in such cases there is no freedom. And Allama says, no, there is freedom. Then the person who says that there is no freedom when there is compulsion, when there is pressure, there is force, they say, but there is a distinction to be made between the person who decides to do something and the person who is doing because there is a gun on his head. Such person is not rewarded if he does something good, is not blamed if he does something bad. Blame, praise, reward, punishment don't come to such cases. Allama says, yes, but these are not about philosophical point of view. That is another issue. Praise and blame, these are based on moral considerations. But from a philosophical point of view, in other sense, of course, Allama doesn't mention here, but I think we can say, even in such cases, there is a sense in which you can talk about moral side of it. Because, for example, if a person puts a gun and says, I'm going to kill you or an innocent person if you don't sell your house, okay, so here morally you are not responsible. But if he says a gun on your head and says, if you don't kill those thousands of people, I'm going to kill you. Or even if you don't kill one innocent person, I'm going to kill you. Here, morally, you cannot accept. Yeah? Morally, you cannot kill another person because you want to save your life. So it's not that as soon as a pressure comes, your moral responsibility goes away. It depends. You have still to calculate. The reasonable people, the rational people, uqala, would only excuse you when what you are going to lose is much more than what you are going to gain. Something like this. Yeah.
Even in the case that the person who is going to sign something or he will be killed, if he chooses to be killed,
Yeah.
I think even in that case, moral judgment can be done again because he could choose to be, for example, he could choose to sign, but he chose to die. So
Yeah, it depends, yeah. Sometimes you must sign, sometimes you must not sign, sometimes you have choice.
when he doesn't have any choice, and it is better to sign.
For example,
to sign.
if they tell you, if you don't sign it, we will kill you. And, pardon?
Sign what?
The contract.
What contract?
For
Every contract. Maybe,
selling your house in half price.
maybe because he's very proud, he says, "Okay, kill me," but I don't sign. Even in that case, he's doing something
Okay,
immoral.
so if you don't sign it and you are killed, are you Islamically doing something good?
No.
Maybe no.
It's not.
But for example, if you are selling your country, you know, you are signing to sell your land to a foreigner who is coming to invade your country. That's can be another issue. So there are lots of moral reservations here.
So I want to say that even in that case,
Yeah.
we have ikrah. We cannot say that moral
Res-
judgments
yeah.
go away. We don't
Yeah.
have any case
Exactly.
that moral judgments goes away.
Yeah. So it's always to be morally judged, but sometimes maybe we are excused. If we are excused, it doesn't mean that there is no moral consideration. This was the point that I wanted to make. You shouldn't say here there is no moral consideration. No, there is moral consideration, but sometimes morally you are excused. You know? Because there is ikhtiyar here. So It has to be decided according to moral principles. And then finally, Allama Rahmatullah Alayhi says that when we consider the relation between the action and the complete cause, the relation is necessary. We have wujub, we have zarurat, necessity. Okay, a necessary relation. But between the incomplete cause and the action, there is not necessary relation. It's possible or contingent. Imkan. Okay? So, something very important is this. I think once we discuss this. When it comes to human actions, I say it in a bold way. Okay? When there is a human action, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not the complete cause. Yeah? Please don't get angry with me. We said this before, huh? Okay. So you only get angry once. Allah is not the complete cause. Yeah? With respect to the abstract thing, to mujarradat, He is the complete cause and therefore His will is enough. But the way He has planned this world is that in addition to He Himself being there, certain things must be available. Conditions must be there, obstacles must not be there. Okay? So, if you want to have a flower here in your garden, you cannot say, okay, Allah exists, so there is illat tammah, so we should have flower. Allah is there, but you need some other things. Okay? So, with respect to human voluntary actions, it's the same. Allah is there, but you need some, other things also to be there. Yes.
The example of flower was not human action.
No, I started with flower, then I went to a human action.
Then for everything,
So I said, in this world, this is the situation.
not just human action. Everything.
Yeah, everything. In the material world. Because here is a world in which you have to have conditions fulfilled and obstacles to be removed. Okay? So, like flower, when it comes to human action, it's the same.
I think it's different because
I know this difference, but
No.
it's not making a difference in our point. It's farq has, very fariq nist.
say the example of flower king.
When we want to have a flower, can we say because God exists, so there is complete cause? It's a latte tammeh.
Not the existence of God. What about the existence of will? God's will.
Anyway, God's will is not here the only factor.
God doesn't will, that's why there's no flower.
Pardon?
God doesn't will, that's why there's no flower.
Okay, so you said there is no will of God, but tomorrow I plant a flower. So it means that will of God depends on my action. I can put a flower here, then you say God wills. If I don't put, you say God doesn't will. What does it mean? It means that God is not the complete cause. God has left part of it to us.
God's will is to give you freedom.
To give us freedom and also other things. God has willed that in this natural world, there must be some conditions fulfilled. God can give you a child without mother or father. Okay? But this is not the way He has planned this world. Normally speaking, He says there must be a father, there must be a mother, they must be married. Okay? And then you can have a child. So, yeah.
The instruction example is clear. What is that part which is upon human being in human actions?
So we are coming to that. So when it comes to human actions, God is not the complete cause. Okay? Then there is a role for human beings. Of course, it's not only us and Allah. Maybe there are also other factors. For example, maybe some other people must do also something, or maybe, for example, nature. For example, I want to make for example, food for you, but there has been no rain. So I have not been able to produce any, food. So it's not always in our hand. But anyway, if it's in our hand, so Allah has decided that human beings in their voluntary actions should be able to think and make decision. And when we make a decision and we want to do it, He lets us do it. So His final will somehow depends on our action. So you cannot say, oh Allah, I did this because you had willed so. No, He says, I willed depending on what you wanted. Yeah? So for example, I take a gun and shoot at someone and kill him. Okay? Then I say, oh Allah, it was your will. If your will was not there, no one could kill him. What do you say? It is true that if Allah's will was not there, no one could. But Allah says, okay, but you are responsible because my will comes after you decide to do something. Okay? Is it clear now?
Will we say that you are responsible because my will is to give you freedom in advance?
Not only for freedom, even for this particular action, God's will is there or not. Nothing happens in this world without His will. But this doesn't mean that we are not responsible. So, in a sense, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so much, giving us freedom that we also decide His will. Partly. I'm talking, of course, about iradiyya fi'liyya, not iradiyya zatiyya. His essential will is something else, but His iradiyya fi'liyya, which is understandable after everything is there, is partly dependent on us. Okay? And perhaps this is one meaning of إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. You decide something, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decides accordingly. If someone has become a very pious alim Rabbani, okay, will of Allah must be there. Otherwise, without Allah's will, he cannot become alim Rabbani. But how this will of Allah was there? Partly because of his own efforts. Yeah? So the person who has not become alim Rabbani cannot say, oh Allah, for him you had this will, for me you didn't have. Do you understand? Yes. I don't know who was first.
I want to complete you.
Your supporter?
Yeah, Ayatollah Jawad was saying that Ghani Umayyad was asking the people that whether Allah wants us to be the ruler of the Islamic world in the way that we are, or He doesn't want. If He wants, so what is your objection? If He doesn't want, and He didn't will, how we overcame Allah's will? So it is a question that they are asking the people.
Yeah.
And the answer is, as you said, that there are two ways of Allah.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Thank you.
Let me say this in another way. Let me say that in the case of killing a person who is killing one other person, indeed God's will is not
Belong.
Yes, does not belong to that person to be killed. God's will has only belonged to freedom of this man, and he is the person who is choosing to kill.
So why someone else was not killed?
Because this is the person who is not, because this.
No, because that person's life is in hand of God. No one can take it away without God's permission.
Okay, because God has given me freedom to kill another person, and I have chosen to kill this person. I am the person who is choosing this person to be died.
So, and then, depending on your choice, God also wills that.
God has only willed my freedom, not killing that person.
No. Your freedom has led to this. So this is also to be willed by God.
But not directly. God has not, because God cannot will something.
No one can lose his life without God's will.
Yes, of course, but this is not something that God has willed directly.
Or if you want, for example, if to have it, for example, to give someone's life or to take away someone's life, it cannot happen without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Because if you say that,
تخرج الحي من الميت وتخرج الميت تعز من تشاء وتذل من تشاء. Everything comes from Allah, but at the same time, people can bring you respect and honor or can damage your respect and honor.
you know, the difference is
There is no conflict. So you can attribute to Allah, but at the same time, you attribute it to people.
so this attribution sometimes is directly to God and sometimes it's indirectly. In the case that I kill a person, I am directly, my will is directly belonging to death of that person, but God's will is not directly belonging to death of that person because God doesn't like that person to be killed.
No,
This
that is irade tashri'iyah. That's another type of irade. That is legislative will.
because this can make some problems. If you say that God has willed for that person to be killed by me,
Yeah.
it means that God has willed something which is not good.
Did
And this never
no?
happens.
Did Allah will Imam Hussein to be killed
Not directly.
directly? Inna Allah sha'a an yaraka qatila.
This is another issue. No, let's not talk about Imam Hussein in that.
Inna Allah sha'a an yarahunna sabaya.
Another person. Suppose that there is a person and I kill him. God doesn't want me to kill him, but I kill him.
Doesn't want you. This is irade tashri'i, in a legislative, but irade takvini is there.
So the only thing that God has.
But you are to be blamed or praised.
Okay, because God has not directly willed that person to be killed. God has only willed my freedom.
When you say direct, God has not directly willed, it's tashri'i. Otherwise, how can God doesn't will something and then that happens in the world?
Yeah, by giving me freedom to that for that. By giving me freedom, everything that might happen.
That's not a problem. Your will is there, God's will is also there. Both of you directly are involved. But God decides after you decide.
What is
There are certain issues that God, without bothering about your decision, does it. Yeah? So for example, God wanted to preserve Ibrahim. So even when they threw him into fire, they couldn't kill him. Because in that particular case, God didn't follow the will of that person. God had made up his mind that Ibrahim must be preserved. Okay? But in most of the cases, God doesn't interfere. Lets people freely decide, and then they do it, and then they have to accept the outcomes. They have to be accountable for that. So maybe if another day they wanted to kill Ibrahim, they could have, killed him. Yeah, it was not. But in that particular case, God wanted to show them how weak they are, that they cannot kill him.
What is the good of explaining this way? That say after every decision, God must make a decision again according to our decision. What is the bad of say? Okay, God doesn't have any will to our bad actions. The only thing that God has will is to give us freedom, and after that, what they make it.
So the problem with this is that then you are thinking that our action are not under God. Only our will is under God.
They are indirectly under.
Pardon?
This is a kind of tafsir.
Yeah. It doesn't fit with Tawhid Af'ali. Because according to Tawhid Af'ali, everything that happens in this world is an action of God. It's not just gives us freedom and then he goes away, the rest is with me.
According to the chain of causes, not directly. Because according to the chain of causes, it becomes.
Anyway, so anything is an action. So even what happens after my will is also his action. But he is not the complete cause. Okay? Therefore, we are responsible for that. We are responsible for our action. You cannot say, oh Allah, I did this because you had will. Because sometimes people say, either they say, I did this because God knew. Like that poem, شراب خوردن من حق ز ازل میدانست. What is the And then this is a kind of jabr. He says, because God knew this in eternity, so I have to drink that. But this is a mistake. God knew this because he knew that you are going to do this voluntarily. The same is with will. You cannot say, if God had not willed, nothing could have happened. You cannot say, I killed this person with gun, but I am not responsible, because God could have saved him like Ibrahim. God didn't want to save him, so you have to blame God. No, God is not, to be blamed. Of course, God has a reason why he preserved Ibrahim and he didn't preserve this man. There must be a reason for that. But this doesn't mean that I am not responsible. I am responsible. You have a question?
I want to ask, say for example you're in a desert or you're in a jungle and you encounter, for example, a wild animal.
Yeah.
In that situation, what is the interference or the intervention of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with regards to whether or not that animal attacks you?
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may stop that animal, may not stop. Because he has a very comprehensive plan. And you cannot always predict what is going to happen. Maybe you are supposed not to be killed, so that animal will not. Maybe you are supposed to be killed. Maybe you could have done something like paying sadaqah or pray. So there are many things. It's not possible for us always to predict what is going to happen. So if animal kills you, you cannot say Allah didn't like me. Or if he doesn't kill you, you cannot say Allah liked me.
But according to Islamic thought, what is the opinion with regards to how much intervention, for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala?
Allah can intervene. This is very important, that for us, Allah is not retired. Allah can intervene in anything. Therefore, we should always trust Allah, we should always pray, we should always depend on Him, but we should not expect from Him to sort out everything.
Can He intervene against free will?
Pardon?
Can He intervene against free will?
Yes.
So if all the conditions are set for something to happen, can He intervene against the free will of everybody there?
But this happens not all the time, exceptionally. And also, I think you were here, we had a discussion that how, when Allah wants to do something, He does it in the way that still you are free. Remember we talked about this? That was a very important point, that He doesn't take away your will. Like for example, Allah wanted to preserve Musa. He didn't force Pharaoh. That say, okay, when you reach Musa, you cannot kill him. But He planned everything in the way that Pharaoh voluntarily preserved Musa. That was a very important point. Remember? You mean why God doesn't stop?
Yeah, because common sense, normally people blame a person who can stop a killer, but doesn't stop that. Because he knows the results of that, because he knows that the family of that killed person.
Yeah, I told you, God has a reason why He didn't stop that killer or animal. But no. Common sense is for us. Okay? So for example, if you were there and you were able to kill that wild animal and save that person's life, I can ask you why you didn't do this. I cannot blame you without asking you. I can ask you why you didn't do this, because maybe you had some reason, some excuse. In the case of God, God definitely has answered, but we cannot question Him. And therefore we cannot blame Him. God has a reason for everything, but his reason is not possible for us to understand all the time. And also we cannot ask him. So you cannot blame God.
I know the reason, but
Did you get the point?
the problem is that we normally use common sense for justifying.
You know, even for human beings, can you blame someone without asking him why you didn't kill that animal? You cannot blame him. You must always let people defend themselves. Never judge about people before asking them. Unfortunately, most of the time we make judgment before asking people. We don't give them chance to defend themselves.
Even Musa did that.
Pardon?
Even Musa did that about the 3 cases with his.
It was wrong. It was, although what Khizr did was out of the normal way of decision making, but still it was not wise of Musa. Yeah, he should have been patient and ask him. Maybe Musa just wanted to ask for the sake of understanding. I don't.
But he had promised not to even ask.
Yeah. In any way, this is not something that is very good. So we should let people to explain. In many cases, this is a very real issue in life, in family life, in, between people who work in the same office, even in political life. This happens. That sometimes I think I know everything and I don't need to ask that person why you did this. Most of the time. Okay? But the experience shows that most of the time people have something to say. Either to justify or at least reduce the blame. Okay? So even if for a week, every day you go, for example, your house and your wife is not there. Every day. For a week, not one day, two. Still don't make a judgment. Maybe she had an excuse that she had to go every week out. You have to ask her. Yeah? And the same for the wives. If your husband comes every day late, you have to ask. Maybe every day he had a reason. Most of the time we don't ask. We make our judgment, and this is very bad. And in the case of God, we can never really make judgment because God has his own, way of deciding, and we don't know. We can never blame God. Maybe when you think that God didn't help you, didn't like you, indeed God was very much caring for you. Yeah?
In general, can you use common sense for justifying?
Common sense is what I tell you. This is common sense. Not to make judgment without asking. That is not common sense. Yeah? Because common sense is to ask people and let them explain. Yesterday in the plane, someone was sitting next to me and he read this, for me. I don't know, you have heard that a person was walking in a kind of sandy, beach or something like this. And he was seeing all the time two sets of footprints. Have you heard this? So he realized that wherever he went, God was with him. There's somehow footprint of God. Okay? But then he saw that when he was in a very difficult condition, there was only one footprint. So he said, "Oh God, when everything was normal, you were always with me. But when I had a problem with family, with business or whatever, you left me because there is only one set of footprint." And then God told him, "When you were in difficulty, I was carrying you. Not only I was with you, I was carrying you." So we think that God has forgotten us. But in reality, God has more love and care for us when we are in difficulties. You are the first. Yeah.
Sheikh, there is a hadith I came across with regards to one of the imams having been approached by one of his companions.
Yeah.
He said, how much free will do we have in our life?
Yeah.
So if I'm not mistaken, he tells the companion to stand on one leg. So the companion stands on one leg, and then he tells him to lift the other leg in the air whilst the other leg is raised. So the companion says, this is impossible, I can only raise one leg at one time. So the Imam replied by saying, this is like the intervention of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your life. He will allow you to have control over some things, but not everything. Now, with regards to the tafsir or the commentary of this hadith, how do we as laymen, as, for example, or an illiterate person like myself, how do you begin to understand that some of those decisions that have happened in your life have been out of your control and have been the responsibility or the decision-making process of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that some of those things that have happened have been completely down to you? How do you distinguish or separate the two?
You mean your decisions?
Yeah, according to
Your decisions always are your decisions.
Well, but
You
according
can
to
comply with the hadith itself.
No, that's different. Your decisions is always your decisions.
so things that happen to you, how do you know if they happen to you?
No, that's another issue. Sometimes I have made a decision about my, for example, a study, my business, marriage, my trips, everything. Going Hajj. These are my decisions, and it's all by me. In the sense that I am responsible. But if you are asking about other people's decisions, or for example, things that are happening without any human role, like catastrophes, if you are asking about them, that's another issue.
So what is the Imam referring to here? When he is saying, he, meaning Allah,
Imam wants to say that because, this discussion, we have had it for several sessions, but very briefly, Imam wants to say that we don't want to say that you have absolute control over everything. There is a space, and that space is left for you to decide, not the whole world. You don't have control over everything. For example, you didn't decide to be a man or woman. You didn't decide to be born into this family or that family, to be born in this country or that country, this time or that time. How much, intelligence you should have, how much memory you should have. There are many things that we haven't decided. But still there is a great space that you can exercise your free will. And interestingly, this is what defines your happiness, your salvation. My salvation is not decided by those things which are not in my control. My happy life in dunya and akhirah is decided by those things that I have control over it. So, there is no absolute control for us, but there is enough control. Like, for example, if you are a pilot, do you have control over everything? No. There are many things that you have to observe. For example, your plane has a capacity. It cannot, go faster than certain speed. It has limited petrol. Yeah, there are rules that you have to, about traffic that you have to observe. But still, you can manage to fly and land safely, or you can kill yourself and other people. So there is a space for you in which you can exercise your free will, your wisdom, your experiences, everything you can use so that you make it a very smooth flight. But you cannot do miracles, you cannot change many things. The problem with us human beings is we don't use that area which is in our hand. We always want to sort out problem in outside area. We normally don't want to make our own house clean. We want to make other houses clean. It's a problem. If everyone acts within his own capacity in a proper way, then the world will be a very good world for all of us. What time is it? Yeah. So, the human actions are not totally dependent on Allah's will, in the sense that it's complete cause and we have no role. Indeed, His final will would somehow depend on our decision, in the way that we explained. If someone is listening this lecture, later, please, listen to whole lecture. Because just taking something out of context would be confusing. So Allama says that we can make some conclusions at the end. One is that in the same way that man, for his existence, depends on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, man's actions also depend on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His will. So both man's existence and man's actions. So what Mu'tazilites have said, that our actions have nothing to do with Allah, delegation of everything to us, this is wrong. Because everything, even our action, is a being, is existence, and depends on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But at the same time, there is a role for us in our action. And Allama says that our actions with respect to complete cause becomes necessary. But if you compare it with the incomplete cause like our will, it's not necessary. It's contingent. So there is no conflict. You can not say these are all necessary. No, it's a contingent. And from this perspective also, we talk about morality, we talk about significance of education, and this, because man has something to do. If we were not able to do anything, we were not able to exercise our freedom, why we should talk about morality, about education, upbringing, training, or for example, say you should have hope, you shouldn't be hopeless, you should be optimistic, and so on and so forth. This means that we have some role to play. Okay, Alhamdulillah, we finished this discussion, and now we reached the verses 28 and 29. So for the inshallah next session, please read in advance few pages. Especially there is a discussion here about how to prove the life in barzakh after we die, according to some verses of the Quran. So inshallah, read that. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillah rabbil alamin.